So, I'm sure we're all aware of the NES or Sega Mega Drive amongst the very best of the early 8-bit and 16-bit generation. But have you ever heard of Famiclone consoles? How about the Microgenius IQ501, or the company that created the Microgenius itself, TXC? After years of collecting and working at a video game store, I'd accumulated and traded for nearly everything video game-wise I could ever dream of, including finishing a complete US Sega Genesis collection a couple years back. A year or so had passed with not many visits to the game store, online purchases, or trades in general. Then one night I found myself cruising through video game listings on eBay, when there it was, the Microgenius IQ501 console. As is, untested, no cords, no controller, and no dignity left. I'd never heard of the Microgenius brand or the IQ line of consoles prior to this ad, and this would be the beginning of a Microgenius rabbit hole. From collecting most of the self-programmed and published titles by Microgenius and TXC Corp, to uncovering multiple hidden Microgenius consoles that probably haven't been seen or heard of by a large percentage of the hardcore video game collecting community. Shortly after the Microgenius IQ501 console arrived at my door, I had the cords and a controller ready for it to be tested. Luckily, I was able to find an original Microgenius control pad listed on eBay also, the same one that would have been bundled with the IQ501 originally. I plugged the console and controller in along with a copy of Xevious, and everything worked great first try. My interest was now sparked even further at this point, and I hopped back online to see what else I could find Microgenius related. That's when I stumbled upon an eBay seller who couldn't have started to sell his collection at a better time. He was able to both enlighten me on Microgenius as a brand and TXC Corp as a company. He was also able to help me track down about half of the official Microgenius self-published library of games. There's plenty to look at in this video and a ton of consoles I bet you've never seen before. If you see anything you have a question about, or you'd like to add a console, game, or accessory I may have missed, please feel free to share them in a comment or tweet me on Twitter at RetroSunday_YT. And I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Now let's get into the video. The Microgenius company was founded in the late 80s in Taipei, Taiwan, and mainly ran until the mid-90s, specializing in Famiclone consoles, controllers, and accessories for NES, Super Nintendo, and the Sega Mega Drive. Most Microgenius clone consoles were marketed in areas where Nintendo consoles were not available or extremely limited, mainly including the Middle East, Southeast Asia, South America, Eastern Europe, South Africa, and East Asian countries, aside from Japan and South Korea. TXC Corp is the parent company of Microgenius and was the first company to use the Microgenius name. TXC was most famous for its line of IQ consoles, along with many third-party variations and exclusive games. TXC Corp initially used the Microgenius name for its range of Taiwanese-made Famicom clones, software, and accessories. TXC later sold the rights to the Microgenius brand to other companies, and the Microgenius name is still in use today, mainly integrated into Chinese Famicom clones and LCD games. If you were a kid growing up in the early 90s in a country like Malaysia, the Microgenius series of Famiclones would be equal in popularity to the NES and other Famicom consoles we would have enjoyed over here in the US and Japanese markets years prior. In Russia, certain models of Microgenius were sold under the Dendy brand, similar to how the Sega Genesis was sold as the Genesis in the US market and sold as the Mega Drive in both the European and Japanese markets. In Poland, one version of the Microgenius console, the IQ502, was sold as a Pegasus console. The Pegasus being the most popular Famiclone console in Russia at the time, and the Dendy being the most popular in Malaysia. In Colombia and certain other Latin American countries, the Micro Genius Famiclones were sold as Nichi Man. They were essentially an unmodified IQ 501 console aside from the stickers on the top. The Micro Genius Famiclones seem to reach the most unlikely of markets sometimes, like North Korea, a country where very few video games have reached. The main reason Micro Genius and TXC decided to tackle these mostly untapped video game markets was to avoid infringing on Nintendo's patents, and Nintendo was very scarcely marketed in those regions. There are several models of the Micro Genius, but the Micro Genius IQ 501 was particularly popular until the official introduction of competitors like Sega and Nintendo in the regions where it was sold. The games came in form of 60-pin cartridges, identical to those of the Japanese Famicom. A standard Micro Genius console package came with 2 wired controllers and sometimes a light gun. Later versions came with infrared wireless controllers. Most versions of Micro Genius are compatible with Famicom cartridges but require a 72-pin to 60-pin adapter to play NES games, although certain models were produced in both 60-pin Famicom and 72-pin NES versions. TXC Corp also developed and published their own games between 1991 and 94 via their in-house development team, Chengdu Taijing Dadong Computer Co., who was owned by TXC. Chengdu was a developer founded in mainland China as a joint venture between TXC Corp and NTDEC, a company that produced Pirate Famicom and NES cartridges from 1988 to 1991. They parted ways with TXC in 1993 and ultimately formed Weijing. TXC only made a small exclusive list of games, about 12 or so, with many being re-released by other companies later on and only a few true exclusives. They made games in 60 and 72 pin. They also made a 62 to 70 pin Micro Genius brand converter. I was lucky enough to find most of the exclusive games for the Micro Genius created by TXC Corp. Currently, I own Thunder Warrior, Journey to the West, Strike Wolf, and Creatum. I have both a loose cart version of Creatum that I acquired when I purchased an IQ 901 handheld console bundle online, along with a sealed version. Aside from the games I own, the only other exclusive TXC game is Chinese chess. But TXC Corp has also made F-15 City War, Enjoyable Horse Racing, Mahjong Block, Pokeblock, Rad Racket Deluxe Tennis 2, Venice Beach Volleyball, Zhao Ma Li, and Policeman. Now I'll take you through some gameplay before we take a look at the actual IQ consoles, so you can get a feel for graphics and gameplay. Thunder Warrior reminds me of Mystical Warrior on Genesis or Ninja on the Master System, with Mario-style running physics. This one definitely gets funner the more you play, and the boss battles and sprites are cool in my opinion. Fun fact, Thunder Warrior was rebranded as Gluck the Thunder Warrior by Gluck Video and released for the NES console. Creatum is a 3D puzzle game. I was able to find a loose copy with my IQ 901 handheld bundle, and before that, I had already acquired a sealed copy from an eBay seller for a solid price. If you open the box, it will contain the game cart, instructions, and a smaller box inside filled with a bunch of poker chip looking pieces in various colors. These pieces are meant to be used in real life to help you figure out how to orient the shapes properly in order to progress in the game and jack your IQ up to get to the next card level. I didn't get what I was doing at first, but after visualizing the blocks in my head without the help of the chips, I was able to complete the first level in about 250 turns or so. I'd say Journey to the West is TXC's version of Ninja Gaiden. TXC definitely has their own style when it comes to graphics and gameplay. This game gets very difficult fairly quickly. It's weird at first using the B button to accelerate your character, but it's a cool way of working around animation, and it gets fun after getting used to it. I thought the boss battles in this one were also cool, and the sprites were fairly unique. Strike Wolf is a fast-paced light gun game. It reminds me of Operation Wolf on the NES, or Terminator arcade game on the Sega Genesis. It's not bad. I'd like to play this one through sometime soon if I ever decide to take it out of the box again. Not sure how many copies of Strike Wolf or Micro Genius games were made, but I don't feel they were made in large quantities. So far, Journey to the West and Thunder Warrior are my favorite exclusive Micro Genius titles. So now that you realize the extent of how many Micro Genius products may be out there aside from the IQ lineup, we have a lot to look at. I'll start off with the Micro Genius consoles listed on Wikipedia currently, and their counterparts in different regions, followed by the games. The IQ 201 is an early model resembling the Famicom, with two hardwired controllers. The IQ 301 is similar to the IQ 201, with the addition of turbo switches. The IQ 501 introduces detachable controllers, sold as the Dendy Classic in Russia. The IQ 502 sold as Dendy Classic 2 in Russia, and the Pegasus IQ 502 in Poland. The IQ 701, which looks nearly identical to the Nintendo Entertainment System. The IQ 901, essentially a handheld version of the IQ console, which you can plug and play on your TV. The IQ 1000 with a built-in infrared receiver on the console. It comes with one wireless controller and one wired controller. The IQ 2000, similar to the IQ 1000, but comes with two wireless controllers. So I thought this was going to be the end of both my journey researching the Micro Genius and this documentary in general, until I went to Google and typed in Micro Genius IQ 100 and every variation in between up until the supposed last IQ console released, the IQ 2000. This is where I got thoroughly surprised, as I was able to discover another 7 IQ consoles not listed on Wikipedia. They're all known to exist aside from one, but each console I'm about to talk about is extremely rare. Let's check them out. Although the IQ 180 console is listed on a couple forums, it has never actually been found and may just be completely unreleased. I stumbled upon the IQ 200 when a picture of it popped up in a sidebar in a different console search. Just like the IQ 601, I couldn't find much on this one. The IQ 505 was sold mainly in Malaysia. It was rare there to begin with, and maybe only made it to a couple other regions close to the Malaysian border. The IQ 601 was unknown to exist until recently discovered by an Asian video game collector in October of 2020. Also nearly identical to a console produced in Hong Kong. Around the same time the IQ 601 would have been released, called the WH-3282. In Indonesia, Spica released the Micro Genius IQ 1001. This console is believed to be a 72-pin model, but judging from the few pictures I've seen, I can't be sure. I've only been able to find a couple random pictures and ads for this console, but the Micro Genius IQ 2001 seemed to be sold mainly in Turkey. Lastly, let's check out some other unique Famiclones around this time you've likely never seen before, along with some cool ones from a couple name brand companies of the time, Subor and Dendy. You thought I was going to end with the IQ 2001 console? Well, so did I. Until I typed in IQ 3000 on Google for my final search of the day, and sure enough, the third picture listed is a Micro Genius IQ 3000 console in the box. I tried to get any info I could on the console, but clicking through to the Russian website where it was listed, there is no description of the product, and it's no longer available. At least we know it was likely sold in Russia, but who knows for sure at this point in time. Again, if there was anything you saw and you have a question, or you'd like to add a console, game, or accessory I may have missed, please feel free to share them along with anything else in a comment on this video, or tweet me on Twitter at retrosunday_YT, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I hope there was something in this video you either enjoyed or learned. I feel there's still a ton of hunting we can do for Micro Genius products, and only time will tell what will be rediscovered next. Thanks to FamicomWorld.com, Wikipedia, and all of the blog posts on Micro Genius stuff for help with specific items and timelines. Also, shout out to Crix for sponsoring this video. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and
Get that skull.